Hey guys, welcome to part two, coercive control and the cases that prove it. Last episode we talked about the myths, the things that victims are told to do that can actually get them killed. This time we're talking about what happens when those myths become headlines. Everything here, like always, is based on fact, checked, sourced, and legal. Before we start, I just want to give a quick and serious heads up. This episode talks about family and domestic violence, child abuse, coercive control, and some really confronting details, including murder, hostage situations, and system failures. If at any point this feels too heavy, please pause, take a breath, and step away. You're not weak for needing a break, you're just human. I'll have all the support numbers in the notes. And before we get into it, I just want to say I'll be off screen for most of this one. Some parts are really heavy, and honestly, I can't talk about them face to face without losing it. So you'll hear my voice, you'll see the stories, the names, the faces, the facts, the people who should still be here. It's not about performance, it's about the truth. And sometimes the only way to tell the truth is to step out of the frame for a while. So that's what I'm going to be doing. As I said, everything that's talked about is fact checked, legally cleared, drawn from my own lived experience and public record. I don't name names for my personal situation. I don't speculate. I just tell the truth and the way that it happened. Okay, so I will check in with you back at the end. Every story starts with a night. Mine did. But what follows is what happens when a system looks right through you, when police call it a domestic dispute, when the paperwork stacks up higher than the protection. That's what connects me to every name I'm about to say. Hannah Clarke, Shanann Watts, different countries, same story. Two families that look perfect from the outside. Two parents doing everything the world tells you to do. Report, cooperate, try to rebuild. And two systems that didn't see the pattern until it was carved into headlines. Hannah Clarke was 31. She did everything the system told her to do. She reported. She asked for help. She tried to protect her children. She had a temporary protection order. She'd gone to police more than once. But when her ex, Rowan Baxter, was supposed to be served a police protection notice, he was out of state. The service failed. Nobody chased it. Weeks later, he was still stalking her, tracking her phone, planting hidden devices, watching from trees. He didn't just threaten Hannah. He used their children to control her. On Boxing Day 2019, he grabbed one of their daughters, Liana, and drove off. Witnesses said he bumped her head. As he shoved her into the car while the other two screamed, police called it a custody dispute. Because there was no court order, it wasn't treated as an abduction, just another family matter. But in that story, there's someone in the headlines that's barely mentioned. 6-year-old Alia. Alia was terrified of her father, but she fought back. When he yelled at Hannah, she slammed the door behind him and shouted, "And don't come back." When he sulked and ignored Hannah, she looked him dead in the eye and said, "Daddy, Mummy said sorry. Can't you talk to her?" He hated her for it, because even at 6, she saw through him. During the abduction of Liana, Alia was the one screaming in the street, "Please, Daddy, drop her. Please, Daddy." Afterwards, she was angry, tiny fists in fury, because she thought she should have stopped him. That's how much she understood, how much she carried. Her grandmother said Alia was strong, defiant, and that strength made her a target. And that's what breaks me, because I see my own daughter in her. The same fierce instinct to protect, that little voice that shouldn't have to be brave, but is. Alia didn't survive what came next, but her fire did. It lives in every child who refuses to be silent, in every survivor who teaches their daughter that bravery isn't compliance, it's defiance. Then came February 19th, 2020. Hannah was taking the kids to school. A normal morning. He climbed into the car carrying a jerry can and a knife. He poured petrol over the seats, over her, over their children, and set it alight. Hannah somehow made it out. Bystanders pulled her from the flames. She was burned over 97% of her body, but she was still conscious, screaming for her children. My babies are in the car. My babies are in the car. Why didn't I just stay with them? She died later that day in hospital. He stabbed himself at the scene. His final act of cowardice. The coroner called him a master of manipulation and still said even if agencies had done more, his intent was already lethal. That's the point. Intent doesn't wait for bureaucracy. After the inquest came Hannah's law. Queensland moved to criminalise coercive control. It now recognises that violence isn't always physical. It's the slow suffocation of autonomy, the psychological hostage-taking that builds until someone finally breaks. Sounds good in headlines, but proving coercive control, nearly impossible. You can't photograph fear. You can't screenshot isolation. You can't hand police a USB of the moment you stopped recognising yourself. The law defines it, but enforcement still relies on discretion. And discretion is where victims vanish. Right now, Queensland law is the strongest. New South Wales and South Australia are following. Tasmania technically criminalised coercive control years ago, but prosecutions are almost non-existent. The rest of the country still treats it as a civil matter under the Family Law Act. And that brings us to another story. Another perfect-looking family. Another system that didn't see the danger until it was too late. Shanann Watts. Chris Watts lived in Colorado with his wife, Shanann, and their two daughters, Bella and Celeste. To the world, they were a perfect family. Smiling selfies, family trips, matching shirts, another baby on the way. But behind the facade was silence. The kind that creeps in right before everything collapses. While Shanann was visiting family with the kids, Watts started an affair with a co-worker. He told her he was separated, that his marriage was ending. The same script every liar uses. By the time Shanann came home, he was already gone emotionally, just a shadow in the same house. Then came August 2018. Shanann got home from a business trip at 2 a.m. By sunrise, she was dead, strangled in her bed by the man who promised to love her. He wrapped her body in a sheet, loaded her and their daughters into his work truck, and drove them 45 minutes to a remote oil site. And what happened there is something you never unhear once you know. He smothered his youngest, Celeste, first. Then 4-year-old Bella, the one old enough to understand, looked up at him and said, "Daddy, no." Those were her last words. He killed her anyway. Then stuffed both children into separate oil tanks and buried Shanann in a shallow grave nearby, their unborn son, Nico, still inside of her. He went home, acted normal, texted co-workers, even did media interviews, standing on his porch pretending to beg for their return, while the entire time knowing exactly where they were. When police pressed him, he failed a polygraph. Then he lied again, claiming Shanann had killed the girls first, and he only snapped. But in the end, he confessed. He pleaded guilty to 5 counts of first-degree murder, unlawful termination of a pregnancy, and tampering with a deceased body. The judge sentenced him to 5 life sentences without parole, plus 84 additional years. At sentencing, the judge called it the most inhumane and vicious crime I have ever handled. This story gutted the world because there were no warning calls, no police reports, no visible bruises, just a woman who loved her family, documented her life online, completely unaware that the danger wasn't outside her house, It was sleeping next to her. Coercive control doesn't always look like violence. Sometimes it looks like withdrawal. Sometimes it looks like husbands saying, "I love you," while planning your death. In Australia, we saw Bo Bradshaw, a 10-month-old baby boy. His mother left home for less than half an hour before her baby boy was dead. Only his father was there. Police called it suspicious, neighbours heard the scream, but the case dragged, charges shifted, and in September 2024, the father was acquitted. The coroner only began the inquest then, because in this country, coroners can't investigate until criminal matters close. Years can pass before a family even learns the truth about how their child died. Then there's Wendy Sleeman, 61 years old, respected, careful, protective. On January 24th, 2023, Wendy reported a disturbance at her Eleanor home. Police were dispatched to the scene. By the time they arrived, she was already missing. When officers got there about 30 minutes later, they found signs of forced entry, blood, and drag marks inside her house. It also suggests the perpetrator may have been monitoring police activity at the time and timed the fatal act either right after they left or during the chaos. The fact that she reported a break-in signals she feared for her safety before her death. It wasn't out of the blue. Her body was found in the boot of her car. Her son has been charged with the murder. Age doesn't save you. Education doesn't save you. When control is the motive, reason doesn't matter. People hear criminalised coercive control and think the battle's won. It isn't, because the same officers who file the reports decide whether they're worth investigating. They decide if a breach is serious. They decide whether you're credible. Police training still carries bias. I've seen it firsthand. As mentioned in part 1, in Tasmania, recruits were once taught about family violence by an academic who publicly claimed women are probably more manipulative than men. That's what shapes the questions survivors like myself get asked, like, but did he physically hurt you? That's why victims stop reporting, not because the abuse stops, but because hope does. Tasmania loves to say it leads the nation, the first to criminalise coercive control. On paper, sure. In practice, almost no charges laid. Because pattern of behaviour is hard to prove when that pattern stretches across months, years, jurisdictions, and the people tasked with proving it don't want to dig that deep. The Family Violence Act here technically covers emotional, psychological, and economical abuse. But unless police record it as a breach or an assault, it disappears into data marked non-actionable. So while the law exists, the system still picks and chooses who counts as a victim. I've seen how strategy replaces justice. The breach I reported happened in May. He was sentenced in July. 2 weeks before that sentencing, I was told the breach I'd reported, the one from May, wasn't even going to be heard. Not until August. That split the timeline clean in half. So when the magistrate handed it down, 4 months imprisonment, suspended for 3 years, plus 12 months of supervised corrections, that sentence didn't include the May breach. By the time August came, that suspended term was locked in. So even though it was the same pattern, same protection order, same man, the breach that happened before the sentencing was now treated as if it happened after. And I didn't stay quiet about it. I begged everyone I could. I emailed prosecution, the lawyer, family violence unit, pleading for that final breach to be included in the July hearing. Nobody replied. Not one person. Then came sentencing day. I sat there and listened as his lawyer stood up and told the magistrate, my client hasn't had any breaches since the start of the year. And he said it knowing the May breach was sitting there, fully investigated, waiting its turn in August. He wasn't lying under oath. He was using the loophole, and the system let him. You could see it in the timing, in the confidence, in the way he phrased it. He didn't miss the breach. He used it. Because technically, he didn't have to lie. He just had to speak before the truth got its turn. He knew the May breach was there. He knew the moment he said those words, it would frame the entire sentencing, and he said it anyway. That's strategy. That's a defense lawyer, doing what defense lawyers do best, bending the timeline until right looks wrong and wrong looks technical. It's not illegal, it's just the kind of legal that makes you sick. And here's the kicker. When that delayed breach finally goes before the court in February for sentencing, it'll be treated as what it actually is, something that happened before July. But legally, the suspended sentence from July can't be touched because the system already treated it like it happened after. So in the end, it works both ways. When it helps the perpetrator, it's after. When it hurts the victim, it's before. It's not justice. That's a timeline engineered to fail the people it's meant to protect. His record is public. A serial family violence offender for 3 years. A 4-month prison term suspended for 3 years. 12 months supervised corrections, and another sentencing still to come in February. During sentencing, child exploitation charges from his history were raised in court, and when combined with the evidence in my case, they helped justify the magistrate's decision to register him as a serial family violence offender. Those earlier matters didn't result in conviction, but they were still allowed to be considered when assessing risk. Because serial offender registration isn't about punishing the past, it's about recognising the danger in the future. And those are the facts. They're public. The only reason anyone knows them is because I refuse to let silence rewrite them. This is why my project matters. Because systems only move when the evidence can't be ignored. If coercive control is about pattern, then survivors need to document the patterns themselves. Messages, screenshots, dates, recordings, anything that builds a map of the abuse, because until we force the system to look, it keeps pretending it can't see. The real horror isn't just the murders, it's the waiting, the years between the incidents and the inquest, the hollow reassurance that it's being looked into, the knowledge that if we die before the paperwork finishes, we become statistics in someone else's spreadsheet. And yet we keep talking, because silence is their safety. Our stories are ours. Paper doesn't stop fire, and laws don't stop control. They just describe it after the fact. Next time, we're going to talk about what justice could look like if the system actually listened, about reform that doesn't just sound good in press releases but keeps people alive. Until then, stay loud, stay safe, and document everything, because lived experience is the one kind of evidence they can't erase.